How you guys doing today? Awesome. Good morning. Awesome. I'm feeling the love. Awesome. So anyone have a good 4th of July? I am just feeling sober right now, literally as we speak. Just kidding. From food. I had like one beer, but I'm like, jacked me up. So Hope got straight A's, and so that's to go to this thing called VidCon with her. And I had no idea what it was. And turns out it was a YouTube Teenage Heartthrob Sensation Conference. I thought she wouldn't be here today. I thought she was out, but sorry, Hope. So basically, get in line at 5:30 in the morning at the Anaheim Convention. You wait 5 hours, get a 10-second autograph. Jump back another line, wait 5 hours, and get a 9-second autograph. And that's pretty much today. And you wake up the next day at 5:30, and then you wait another 5 hours, get a 10-second autograph. And there's heartthrobs everywhere, but they're YouTube sensations. And here's a picture of me after a 6-hour wait. And I made them do West Side. I was like, let's do West Side, guys. And go, oh, yeah. So they're doing West Side, you know. I was going to lyrics at this time. And, man, a couple things I realized is 2 things. When you agree to go somewhere with your teenager, do your research. Know where you're going. And the second one is life passes so quick, especially when your kids grow up, and something happens when your kid goes from child to teenager. They transform from cute little children to cute, crazy teenagers. And let me show you when Hope was little. So cute, right? And then teenager. You know, difference between a young child and a teenager is teenagers are crazy, and little children are a great example of humility. I'm actually looking forward to watching Hope grow, and a little note to parents, as your children grow, you as parents have to grow with them. If you don't, they'll pass you up, and then you're going to have serious conflict. Praise God. Webster's dictionary defines innocence as a lack of experience with the world and with the bad things that happens in life. A lack of knowledge about something. So innocence is not knowing. You just don't know. You got a lack of experience and you just don't know. While humility is the opposite of pride. C.S. Lewis says, there is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when he sees it in someone else, and of which hardly any people except Christians ever imagine that they are guilty themselves. There is no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we are more unconscious of in ourselves. The vice I am talking about is pride or self-conceit. And the virtue opposite to it in Christian morals is called humility. And today as Christians, we're going to look at the importance of humility in the heart. You know, non-Christians, we can say a lot, struggle with pride. But on the flip side, see, us as Christians struggle with this just as much. The pride is not something that we become cured of as you become a Christian. It becomes even more of a struggle because sometimes even as Christians we become more prideful. Sometimes I think we categorize ourselves in this elite group where all of a sudden we become more judgmental. We become more finding faults in other people. I think that's what turns non-Christians off. And we really got to be careful of it. In Matthew 18:1-4, the disciples are hanging out with Jesus. Jesus is the only passage we have today, so pay attention. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. So the disciples have been hanging out with Jesus for a long time. They've been being mentored right under Jesus, and they're hanging out, and they start having this discussion. Who is the greatest among us in this group? These Christians who've been following Jesus right under Jesus' feet, or these followers of Christ, have been having a discussion of who is the greatest. These guys were learning right under the mentorship of Jesus, wanted to know who was the man. Peter was probably like, you know, guys, you guys are pretty cool, but let me ask you a question. Any of you guys walk on water? Any of y'all chill with Jesus on the mountaintop? I didn't think so. I'm the man, he's probably thinking. So they asked Jesus, yo, Jesus, got a question for you. We're all gathered here. Which one is the greatest? See, at first glance, it doesn't seem like they do anything wrong. They just want to know who was the top dog. Don't we as Christians do that too? I'm such a good Christian. You may not admit it, but sometimes I feel like I'm such a good Christian. I pastor. I prepare 48 hours before a service, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes I'm just saying. I must be a great Christian. Obviously, God has granted me this opportunity to preach. How great am I? Or I'm not like them. What about this? When someone else comes to our church and they don't quite fit in, we think, I don't know if they're worthy or of any value for me to spend time to reach out to them. See, at first glance, the disciples don't do anything wrong. I just want to know who was the top dog. Isn't it cool that they were struggling with that back then and we still struggle with it today? The answer is because it doesn't go away. But the question highlighted the core of the disciples' heart. The question was really a self-absorbed question rooted in pride rather than humility. So the content of that question, the context of it, was rooted in pride rather than humility. Just asking it alone is a very prideful question, especially when walking with Jesus and seeing the lead that he's been doing. The people who are constantly comparing and competitive have this great sense of pride. Is pride a bad thing? Pride is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not going to tell Noah when he goes out to play sports, hey, Noah, I want you to lose today. Hey, Noah, I want you to put everyone first. I'm going to say, no, you need to get out there and win. I want you to do all these things because I want him to win. I want him to experience these things, especially in our Western culture. You don't want to be number two or you don't want to be the loser. And sometimes when it's convenient, I'll say, no, I'll do the right thing. But other times I'll say competitive, win, 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 which is not necessarily a bad thing. But there is some times where we see glimpses of amazing, powerful moments when humility overcomes pride. I got a short video that I want to show you guys that I think really highlights this point. This kid has a cerebral palsy. Is that what it's called? Cerebral palsy, where he can't move. And he wanted to wrestle. So they asked all these kids, hey, which one of you guys would wrestle my son? And so they come out. 7th grade. Pretty good, right? There was one with music, but it was too much. It was like when the music came on, it was like, oh my God. Like, I'm just going to chill on that and play that. And it was like 8 minutes long too. So look, the video is powerful because it shows an example of humility over pride. Competition is good when appropriate, but when it comes to our relationship with God and our stance and our ranking in the midst of God, we must be courageous to see and explore our own pride that hurts the relationship. Here's a question we want to ask ourselves today. This question I'll ask you: how prideful do I think I really am as a Christian? A scale from 1 to 10, 10 being most prideful, just take a moment and think, how prideful do you think you are as a Christian? Scale 1 through 10, 10 being the highest. So let me give you a couple seconds. You don't have to answer, but what do you think? Where do you think you fall on the continuum of that scale? Well, I think after sitting for a while, I think we fall somewhere between 10 and 10. Because in comparison to God, we will ultimately fall short. That our human nature and who we are as people, as sinners, we're going to always fall short. And I lean towards being safe and saying, God, I am so prideful. I embrace it. God, I am desperately in need of you. Because in comparison to God, we will fall short, and all of us will struggle with pride in our lives. that create these barriers to humility. Did you know that pride actually causes a barrier and creates a barrier between you and God? See, if little children lose their innocence when they become teenagers, what do you think happens when teenager becomes adults? It gets worse, I think. We've experienced more. We've seen more. We just have little kids that we can boss around, and it makes us feel less prideful and less dumb, right? I think it gets worse. When we become adults, if children lose innocence and think they're all smart when they become teenagers, I think it's worse for us as adults. We think that we know everything. We think that we know what's best. Just ask your children. They'll tell you. Dad, you think you know everything. I go, I do know everything. Just that response alone is I don't know everything. And I just don't want to waste my time in discussion. So Jesus answers the disciples this question. Jesus answers the disciples' question by pointing out the significance of a child's weakness and dependence compared to the self-advancement of the disciples. The original question was to self-advance the position of the disciples, but Jesus points out the children. See, children were valued less than servants during that time, so much so that you could kill them. You could really kill your children at that time. They had no rights. Even servants and slaves were valued higher than children. When Jesus is pointing out that you've got to be like these children, he's actually saying you've got to be like these kids who are devalued to some regard, and you've got to be like them in order to be able to experience conversion rather than competition. See, children usually don't exaggerate their sense of pride. It's so cool. When I saw little Noah last week and this week, he comes out, and when our family's walking in, last week he goes, the other Noah, Kim, is here. Yay! Right? He walks out, gives a high five, and Noah comes out, opens the door, and goes, Noah's here. Yay, it's so cute, man. So precious. Imagine me yay, Pastor Steve Oak is here. Woo! And then I hold his hand, and we walk in together. What the heck, right? I'm not doing it next week. Who cares? I should be doing that. But because I'm a distinguished adult and prideful, I can never let myself be seen like that. But how cool and weird would that be? It would be more weird than cool, but I'm just saying, right? Children are teachable. How unteachable do we become as adults because we want it our way? Look, I'm just saying, right? I may be completely wrong, and I may be just talking about myself. But I would say, if these questions kind of strike a chord, I would say maybe you may be experiencing some pride, especially in light of God's glory. Children give us a glimpse of how we should approach God in humility, and the definition of humility is this. The Bible talking about is this. Humility, when you come before God, is stripping ourselves from all of our achievements, all of our knowledge, all of our possessions, and coming before God with an empty and open heart. So we could try to impact and influence people here on earth by what we do and what we've done. When we take that same attitude to God, you actually are coming to God with your hands closed. What it's saying is when you come before God, it doesn't matter what you've done, what you've accomplished, what you know in comparison to what God knows. And we spoke about that a couple weeks ago. What you have that will fade away and rust when you go to God. All the people that you know, everything that you accomplished here on earth means absolutely nothing when you come before God. If you want to truly come before God in humility, you've got to say, look, I'm going to let go of everything and come to God with open hearts and open hands. Say, God, whatever you have to offer, I will take and I will fill. That's what I think it means to be humble in light of being what a Christian is. See, before looking at this, I was thinking humility is, I've got to talk a certain way, I've got to be a certain way so people know that I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian, I've got to be. I think that will come. But humility as a Christian, really, aside from all those things, how do we approach God? What's the question we ask to God? God, what's the question? Is it one of self-advancement? Or is it one of saying, God, I don't know anything. I'm just like this kid. I want to come down. I want to be teachable. I want to be moldable. Everything that I've accomplished to this point, even from me coming from the gutter to where I'm at right now, it means absolutely nothing because you're the one who gave that to me. And I'm not going to come to you in any way except broken in my weakness and dependent on you. And that's actually how God wants you to come to him. People in our culture says, you don't want to come to me like that. You've got to be strong. But God is saying, come to me, weak and broken. C.S. Lewis says this, there are only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to God will say in the end, those to whom God will say in the end, thy will be done. So the question is, do you want it God's way or do you want it your way? And it's a matter of humility. Because having it my way is saying, God, I know what's best. Having it God's way is saying, God, I don't know anything, but I know you got me this far, so I want to keep going with you. I'm going to keep riding with you, God. Jesus, take the wheel, right? Jesus, take the wheel. All right. So I've got good news and I've got bad news. Which would you like first? Okay, good. Bad, okay, oh, good. Right. So bad news is this. Bad news is you and I will always have to battle with pride here on earth. It's just part of the game. It's just part of life. And no matter what happens, you and I are going to have a constant struggle with pride. The question is being aware of it. As you leave here, how aware of your pride will you be? So the moment you think you are cured of pride is the moment you are most prideful. The moment you start seeing other people, things that you don't like, is the moment you start seeing the things that you don't like in yourself. I used to think, how could they be like that, man? What do they think they are? They're a Christian, man. And I think now looking, how could I even have that type of heart towards him? Who the heck do I think that I am? It's just part of the game. It's just part of being a sinful person. The bad news is that you will have to deal with pride the rest of your life. And the moment you think you're not prideful is the moment you're most prideful. Possibly. And here's the good news, is that embracing your pride and my pride will enable us to surrender more to Jesus. I love this analogy of hugging the cactus. Just hug the cactus. Say, you know, Steve, I'm a prideful person. Everything about me is very prideful. The way I see my wife, the way I see the world, the way I navigate, I'm so prideful. Okay, we've accomplished that. So here's a tool. So here's a tool on how to overcome that for that moment or how to get better. Is to actually say, I totally surrender, God. God, I know I'm a prideful person, but in light of who you are, I am absolutely nothing. And knowing that, God, knowing that, I know that you fill me up. And here's a crazy thing that I've learned in the past as a Christian, and I've learned over the years, and I'm still continuing to learn every day. This might have to be like a new tattoo or something, right? Something to remind me every day of what this means, right? What I've realized is when we come to God with empty hands, He will always fill them. When you come to God and say, God, I surrender, I need you, God will always fill your empty hands. But the moment you clench up your fist and you hold on to these things that give you pleasure, hold on to things that you self-medicate with, hold on to things that give you safety, that God will not be able to fill your hands because they're already full. And that's what pride is by saying, God, why aren't you helping me? And God's saying, open your hands. You're like, okay, I did. Help me, God. Help me, right? And God's like, oh, keep them open, dude. No. And God's saying, look, if you want me to fill you, just come to me and I'll continually flow into you. Or I'll continue to fill you. It's a matter of our heart. There's a story about monkeys in the Philippines. Has anyone heard about monkeys in the Philippines? All right. I should have said God is good. He's all good. All right. No, we won't do that. I don't actually want to when people do that. In the Philippines, monkeys are caught by hollowing out coconuts and inserting sticky aroma, right? Candy of aroma to attract the monkeys who put it in their hands to grab the candy and can't get their fists out. They won't let go, even when their captors approach and they end up as monkey stew. Jesus sees us as monkeys and tells us, let go. It seems raving nonsense to the monkey, but it is a simple sense. Addicts see sense as nonsense and nonsense as sense. That's why Jesus is saying seems hard and paradoxical to us. We are all addicts in this room, like the monkeys. Only the brand of candy differs. A man is a slave to anything he cannot part with that is less than himself, said George MacDonald. And I wish I had some really cool, smart thing to tell you. But what I really want to tell you is don't become monkey stew. That's really the point of today. And you will become monkey stew if you can't let go of your pride. So remember monkey stew and remember this. And forget VidCon. Except, oh, I'm just kidding. That's really it. Don't become monkey stew. pride is such a crazy thing because the more I don't hug the cactus, the more I feel like it creeps up on me. The more I don't surrender, the more I don't face it, the more I don't battle it face to face, the more I feel like it creeps up on me. You've got to be in constant battle with your pride, which is a great thing because the constant battle that you have will constantly push you towards surrendering to Jesus. Because what you'll realize, and I realize still to this day, I cannot do it on my own. There's also this week, you and I'm pretty sure we'll have so many opportunities to let go of pride. Maybe it's with your kids, maybe it's at work, maybe it's with God. Whatever it is, I'd like to challenge you this week to practice letting go of pride, and here's how you do it. The only way I know how to let go of my pride is when I compare it to God. When I compare it to God, I say, God, who do I think that I am? You've given me so much, but yet so many times I think it's because of what I've done and what I deserve. And when you take an honest look into your life, and that's the conclusion you come down to, and as a Christian, you will find yourself in a place where you say, God, well, what's next? And that's what God's asking us to do, is say, God, I don't know what's next. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's in the future. I don't know. I'm confused about myself. What's next? So I'm just going to come to you, God. And I think what God does, he slowly gives you pieces, right? I want to end with this powerful video on pride and humility. I just thought it was powerful, and I wanted to include it today. And I want you to look at different examples of pride and how humility overcomes pride in the end.
How easy it is for us to forget what it was like when we were once family. The times we shared. How easy it is for us to forget how to love. How easy it is for us to forget how to smile. It's easy to forget. But it's even harder not to love.
Ma.
If you want to watch that video, make you cry, go to the website. You know, in our lifetime, we're going to find ourselves in the place of the Father and Son going back and forth. And I can't count on my hands how many times I've fallen and created chaos and destruction because of my pride, when so many opportunities to practice humility were available. And as we approach God in humility with empty hands, God will always give us direction, and it will always bring us to a place in life that will bring us to our knees. You know, over the last 25 years, I built up resentment towards my parents, especially my dad, and I didn't realize how angry I've been. I know that sometimes Hope sees it, and I think it's pride. There's stuff that he's done in the cultural things I didn't understand. And this pride drove a wedge in our relationship. And I'm learning now as I'm much older that that's not really what it seemed, and that pride has been the thing that has been deteriorating our relationship. You know, it's so cool. God has been doing some really cool things as we've been restoring relationship and dropping our pride. And one real cool thing, you know, we don't really talk. You know, we never say, like, I love you, or there's no, like, that stuff where they touch you on the back, all that good stuff, right, which we really try to do at home. And it was really cool to see God work, because I started praying and say, God, you know, I keep saying I want a relationship with my dad, but I don't know how to do it. So do it. You know, I just don't know. I know how to do it, but I just can't get myself to that place. Can't get myself to that place where I haven't talked to him and stuff. And so God did a really cool thing. And my cousin was getting married, and they had the music come on. It was DJ time, right? And so, you know, music comes on, and you either love dancing or you think, oh, crap, it's dance time, right? All right. You know, and then you want to dance, but you can't dance, so you're like, oh, crap. But then, you know, the more people, the more people who aren't as prideful, that don't care, they go out there dancing, and it looks like crap, but they're having such a good time, and I'm like, I can't even get myself to do that, because I'm so cool, you know, I can't even look so stupid. So then all of a sudden, all these people are dancing, Hope's dancing, my dad goes out there, right, and he's dancing like this. Right, and then he'll go like this. And then, like, there's like 50 Korean ajumas doing that, right? One ajuma was going like this, you know, like this, you know. I was like, what the hell's going on, right? So then you're like sitting by yourself at the table, and you're like, oh no, right? Like, then you get your phone, you're like, thank God for phones, right? So then Hope was like, let's go dance. I'm like, damn. So I go up, and then it's more awkward because my dad's right there next to me. And he's like doing this. You know, Hope's doing something crazy, and all these ajumas around, and then Priscilla's dancing, and I'm just like, you know, like, oh, God, dude. And then all of a sudden, I feel this hand touch my hand. And it is my dad's hand. And I thought, oh, my God, this is really, really awkward. It shouldn't be awkward, but I'm just going to sit in it. And I got to show Hope pride being broken down and healing and restoration happen. And I believe that's the work of God. And I believe that's just the way God works. See, I was like a little kid, sitting there not knowing what to do, wanting to be taught, wanting to be shown, wanting for a father's touch. And God intervenes, and he gives me that moment where it brought healing. And I believe what pride does, it also destroys our relationships here on earth, but it will also create a wedge between you and God. Because the problem is you will come to God like this, and you'll become bitter. And when bitter people, what they do is they drink poison expecting the other person to die. And you start judging. And you start comparing yourself. And you start ranking yourself based on your accomplishments here. And you're coming to God like this. The one thing that I learned is that the more I come before God in humility in the way where you come with open hearts and open hands, and in your weakness and in your brokenness, God begins to lead you to quiet and still waters. As you start coming to places, this is so crazy, God, this is so crazy, but I feel so at peace in the midst of this craziness. And that's what humility does. It opens your heart to solutions and relationships that God has to offer that's out of this world. I'd like to give you an opportunity today to come to God with open hearts and open hands as the praise team comes up. And this is just, don't be monkey soup and go like this. That's the sermon. Just remember that. That this thing of pride is very crazy, and we'll all have it for the rest of our lives, and we'll struggle with it. Let's lean on each other. Let's pray for each other. But that's only half of it. The other half is you've got to be willing to see yourself for who you are. And this world will say, you're crazy. And this is a side note, not to devalue you, not to say go out and lose everything, but humility is also understanding the gifts that God's given to you and being able to use those gifts for His glory. So humility is two things. It's coming to God with open hearts and open hands, saying, God, here I am. Teach me, mold me. But it's also saying, God, I recognize what you've given to me and the talents that you've given to me, and I'm going to go all the way with what you blessed me with. Even if it means not making a lot of money. If it means making a lot of money, I'm going to go that way too. But if it don't mean that way, God, then I'm going to go that way, whichever way you have for me, the talents you've given to me. And I trust that you will bring heaven on earth and you'll be able to create healing and stuff in my life that this world just can't offer. And I, even as a pastor, struggle with this so much, especially a pastor not making money. Struggle with it, man. In our 40s now, maybe some of you guys are over 40. I'm just saying, start thinking, like, what is my life? I've only got a few more years left to live. What is my life? I think at those moments, instead of trying to figure it out, we just come to God as a kid at heart. Jesus actually gives you permission to come as a kid at heart. Spend some time apart from the pressures of this world. I challenge you for this moment to slowly melt the mask that you've had to put on. To slowly strip away all the actions of humility that we've had to do in order that we can receive the benefits of looking humble. But I challenge you to come to God with this new definition of humility by having to say, God, I'm going to hug the cactus. I'm weak, I'm broken. There's some things that I do well, but in light of you, God, I am nothing. And in my nothingness, you love me so much and you give me so much. Just come to God in that way.